A short while back, I released a video featuring all of Cersei Lannister's costumes from HBO's Game of Thrones and created for the show by series costume designer Michele Clapton. With House of the Dragon just a few weeks away, I thought it would be fun to feature all of Daenerys Targaryen's costumes before House of the Dragon premieres on Sunday, August 21st. It's interesting looking back now at her entire wardrobe as a whole. Despite where the show ended up in Season 8, it's hard to argue that Dany didn't have some of the best outfits ever seen in fantasy. For the sake of this video, just like I did with the Cersei costumes, I'm going to rank them in order of my least favorite to my most favorite, and to save some time, I've grouped some of the similar costumes together. This is just my opinion, and you will likely have your favorites. Let me know in the comments section below which Mother of Dragons costumes you like best. Now with that aside, let's get to the list. You can skip ahead to my top 10 list if you don't have time to watch this entire video. I've marked it in the chapters. And as always, there will be some spoilers for all 8 episodes of Game of Thrones. 38. Silk Robe. While I was making this list, I'd completely forgotten about this costume that Dany wears when she takes the lead with Khal Drogo in the Season 1 episode, The King's Road. 37. Simple muslin dress. A very simple costume, this outfit was worn very briefly in the Season 2 episode, The Ghost of Harrenhal, during Dany's stay in Qarth. It's a plain wrap dress with overly long sleeves that are ruched up and fastened with a brooch. 36. Dosh Khaleen suede dress. In Episode 3, Oathbreaker, Dany arrives in Vaes Dothrak, and the elder Dosh Khaleen give Dany a change of clothes. This is the first time since Season 2 that Dany hasn't chosen her clothing. The tunic, a shapeless dress of brown suede. It's also the first time Dany has been without her pants and boots since Season 1. The tunic is cut and hand-stitched together. Through her ordeal, Dany has managed to retain her mother Rhaella's ring. Dany has worn her mother, Queen Rhaella Targaryen's ring on her index finger from her first appearance through every subsequent costume change. Actor Emelia Clark confirms this by saying, "This ring is fundamentally the only thing that Dany's had from day one, Season 1. It's her mother's ring." The Iron Lock ring was made for the show by jewelry designer Gloria Carlos. Number 35, silk dressing gown. In Episode 8, Second Sons, Dany dresses in this luxurious wrap-style robe after Daario, disguised as an Unsullied, steals into her tent while she's having a bath. The robe is similar in color and style to the silk robe that she wore with Khal Drogo. The fabric is a silk metallic chiffon in the color caramel from Top Fabric of Soho. The robe has overly long sleeves that are tacked up and a long train with a sackback style collar. The bodice features knife-pleated gathers that taper into a tie at the side. Number 34, Dothraki peasant-style costume. Michele Clapton stated that when Dany goes to the market in Vaes Dothrak, she buys what looks like a dragon skin top and starts to create her own look within the Dothraki style. I think it's from when she takes the initiative with Drogo, she then becomes Dothraki. The bodice is made from salmon leather from Chase Irwin, and the neckline, cap sleeves, and apron are trimmed with scales, the idea being that Dany, while Dothraki, would have incorporated some of her Targaryen ancestry. The apron is decorated with rows of small feathers and natural beads. Clapton said that the blue accents are meant to show Dany's profound love for Drogo. Dany wears this costume until Drogo died in Episode 10. Number 33, short dress with cape sleeves. In the wars to come, Dany visits her dragons Viserion and Rhaegal in the catacombs of Meereen wearing a less formal version of her near-white dragon scale gown. This dress is a slightly off-the-shoulder split V neckline held together with a fabric cross-strap, long hanging cape-like sleeves, and 2 front skirt slits. Her dark trousers and boots are visible under the knee-length dress. Dany wears the dress again in episode 5, Kill the Boy. It's hard to tell the actual color because of the lighting, but I would guess that it appears to be a taupey gold micro suede type fabric. Clapton has kept the decoration to a minimum with some tone-on-tone lock-stitch embroidery, starting at the shoulders and working its way down over the bust and sleeves. It's also in this look that we first spot Dany's pearl ring, which of course will have some significance at the end of season 5. Number 32, Blood Red Dress. While I was excited to finally see Dany in red, the only time in all 8 seasons that she wears red, I have Dany's season 8 dress lower on the list because it's essentially a replica of her Dragonstone throne room dress down to the silhouette, pleated underskirt, and dress fabric, but in a different color. I'll get to that costume later on this list. The dress is decorated with some subtle embroidery. Number 31, Blue Dress with Leather Bodice. In the season 3 episode Misa, Dany adds this leather bodice armor piece to her blue dress. The shoulders have a similar cobra hood silhouette as the dress, although with a slightly more upturned shape. In this image from episode 10, we get a good look at the rivets holding the cross straps in place. Dany wears a slave choker as an homage to the freed slaves into season 4. Technically, this isn't a complete costume, and in season 8, Missandei will repurpose it. Number 30, Qarth Dothraki Mashup. For practical reasons, Dany's outfit is back to her Qarth and Dothraki look. Dany's top looks like her blue dragon scale tunics dyed brown. In this shot, you can see that Dany has placed her pearl ring around her neck for safekeeping. With the top, she's wearing her leather trousers with the rawhide overskirt and metal belt. Number 29, Dothraki Khalasar look. In episode 6, Blood of My Blood, Dany rides with Daario and the Khalasar while wearing this form-fitting leather bodice and belt. I can't quite tell what she's wearing on the bottom, but it's safe to assume it's her leather trousers and an overskirt of some kind. The bodice has shoulder princess seams and side seams, and while you can't see them here, they're fastened with leather laces. Dany also wears fingerless leather riding gauntlets. The bodice has an unfinished leather neckline and cap sleeves. Dany wears a strip of leather ties around the right bicep, and the matching leather belt has a hammered bronze decorative rondel and leather lacing detail. Number 28, Qartheen look, leather armor. Number 27, Qartheen look, gold armor. I've placed these two costumes together because they are essentially the same silhouette, although I have to say I prefer the gold armor. In the season 2 episode, The Old Gods and the New, Daenerys trades in the gown and adopts a more masculine look derived from the powerful men of Qarth, a sort of hybrid from different sources. The tunic and filigree armor are modified versions of the Qarthmen's coats and belts, while the leather skirt and trousers are Dothraki in origin. The top is the beginning of the evolution of Dany's costumes and the first time she dresses in this wrap-style, high-waisted tunic and cobra hood-like cap sleeves that will carry throughout the next few seasons. In episode 7, A Man Without Honor, Michele Clapton said of Dany's further transition, so she starts wearing this gold corset over her Dothraki costume, then eventually a leather corset over a Qartheen man's top, blending the two cultures and creating her style. The seam lines of the leather armor are nearly identical to the golded filigree armor. And unlike the pale blue and silver Qarth tunic, this pale purple tunic has the same dragon scale trim as we saw in her fish leather bodice from season 1. Number 26, Viewing Gown. Dany dresses in this sheer silk gown when she is presented to Khal Drogo by her brother Viserys in the series premiere episode Winter is Coming. Of this costume, Michele Clapton said of it, "The viewing dress is essentially designed to make her look naked, as Drogos come to see the goods, basically. It's accented by these dragon-headed brooches which also hold it up." This look is a 2-layer bias-cut gown made from sheer silk chiffon or georgette fabric. The lining is a soft gray and the overlay is white. Dany wears a Greek fibula or Celtic brooch in the shape of a three-headed dragon as a fastener at the shoulders of her viewing gown. Notice that the model wears the Celtic brooch is similar to Dany in this painting titled A Bejeweled Harem Beauty. Number 25, Slave Dress. In the Season 3 episode The Bear and the Maiden Fair, Dany dresses in this bi-colored silk gown when her army reaches Young Kai. Unlike Emelia Clark's other custom gowns made for the show, this one is off the rack but with some adjustments. In a 2013 interview with Fashionista, Michele Clapton said, "I was in Dubrovnik at an amazing shop. I really wanted one more dress for Daenerys and I didn't have time to do it. So I walked into the shop and saw our slave dresses. There was this Viognier dress and I was like, oh my God, it's a slave dress." In episode 5, the first of his name, Dany once again wears the Viognier off-the-rack gown. The cincher-style belt is a hammered bronze metal, while the collar still echoes the slave style without actually being a slave collar. Number 24, Dragonstone look. This Season 7 look features a textured silver Carthene-style gown with a stand-up neighbor-style collar. This collar style is in keeping with Dany's brother Viserys and Rhaegar. The fabric is silvery in a way, or gray with silvery threads. The underskirt is sunburst pleated, and the sleeves have a nice lacing detail. She's wearing her three-headed dragon pin without the chain. The opening has moved away from an arch as depicted in earlier seasons and now is shaped more hexagonal, like the stone floor in the throne room. Perhaps Clapton took inspiration for the silhouette from this silk dress by American fashion designer Elizabeth Hawes from her 1936 Fall-Winter collection. The dress is titled The Sticks, is from the Costume Institute collection at the Met. Number 23, soft gray leather with red fur strips. Number 22, gray leather with red and gray fur. Number 21, white fur coat with red trim. Dany starts off Season 8 with a series of leather and fur coats. I've grouped them together because there isn't enough difference, in my opinion, to set them apart. The Death of Mercy costume has rounded shoulders instead of the armored shoulders we've become accustomed to on many of Dany's costumes in the later seasons. There is just a bit of fur with these bits of maroon between the seams. Linnea Stemfers, the textile artist behind the costume and others in Season 8, says on her Facebook page that this is one of her favorite pieces from Game of Thrones that she has ever worked on. I'll leave a link for you in the description if you want to check out my interview with Linnea. Like her other winter coats worn in the north, her gray leather coat has layers of maroon fur sandwiched between gray leather strips. Clapton stated for Dany, she's looping back to her house colors. She tells The Hollywood Reporter she's finally really finding her true style after years of being influenced by people around her. This silhouette harkens back to her time in Marine. You might remember that Missandei wore a version of this. A lovely detail is the scallop leather edges, pinked along the edge, creating a bit of a dragon scale motif. Little silver dragon claw beads finish the look with some embellishment on the shoulders and a smattering on the front. The white fur coat with accents of maroon fur is the look that she wears when she arrives in Winterfell. Actor Emelia Clark said in an interview that she had to be sewn into the form-fitting costume, sometimes for hours at a time, and cut out when she needed to take a pee break. She sometimes wears it with a white fur pelt, like during a romantic getaway with John. Clapton told British Vogue, "It was tricky to construct because we had to make 3 matching versions for the shoot, and Emelia had to be able to straddle a dragon while wearing it." The back of the coat is meant to represent a dragon spine. Clapton stated that it took some time to get the technique right, but had to cut back the length of the fur to accommodate Dany's wig. Number 20, Dragonstone coat dress. Moving into colder weather, Dany wears this coat dress in the Season 7 episode of Eastwatch. She wore it first in the Spoils of War while riding Drogon. It has the Cobra-style collar implemented into the dress with a right-left crossover asymmetrical style cut with Asian inspiration. According to Clapton, the collar is intended to be Dany's version of armor. The fabric is herringbone zigzag motif, which Clapton said in certain light looks like dragon scales. The construction of this dress is pretty complicated, and the reason is that there are a variety of things going on. Clapton said that Dany's dresses take the longest to complete over any other character. So here, the collar is seamed into the dress like a princess seam, but there is an additional angle seam on the side front, just under the arm. The majority of the shaping comes from these long princess seams in the front and back. An additional tapered seam at the center back creates this amazing structured curviness. I think whoever cut this gown also cut Littlefinger's gowns because the inverted chevron technique is also used on Littlefinger's collars. A detail that I find mind-boggling is this attempt at lining up the zigzag pattern at each seam. Finally, the large vent at the back of her dress gives it more of a coat-like quality, but also a necessity for flying dragons. The front of the dress is slightly shorter, wraps around the back, and the hem angles down into a bit of a point in keeping with her waist seam. Number 19, black leather. As many of you know, I am not as much of a fan of all the black leather in later seasons, something that Clapton calls a shutting down of color, but this is the only time Dany wears black in the show. While we have seen this silhouette before, I like the dragon scale motif that looks like it has been etched into the leather. There's an overdying of maroon that creates this ombre effect that ties into the color of her sash and cravat. This is as close to the Targaryen sigil colors as we have ever seen in all 8 seasons. You will get to see the true house colors in the upcoming House of the Dragon. The Chain of Intent is an oxidized and tarnished variation created by jewelry artists Eunice and Eliza for this costume. Number 18, pink Grecian gown. How special is this costume when it's the first time Daenerys Targaryen is pictured on the small screen, and it shows the range of Emelia Clark going from an innocent princess into a full-fledged queen. Michele Clapton said of Daenerys' debut costume, "Daenerys starts as this very innocent, beautiful young girl, and I just wanted a real elegance of cut and a simplicity. Certainly not medieval, it's almost slightly Grecian, but it's her own particular style." In her book, she said, "The costume is a tube of fabric gathered onto a rope with a weighted disc at the back of the waist to secure it in place." This is one of my favorites. Her costume reminds me of the softly draped Grecian styles depicted by Art Nouveau artist Alphonse Mucha and Victorian neoclassical artist John William Godward. Here are some examples of paintings from Alphonse Mucha's 1898 art series and Spring from the Seasons from 1896. Number 17, Dothraki costume. Worn in the Season 1 episode Lord Snow, Dany's first Dothraki costume is a 2-piece ensemble featuring a loosely braided leather and suede halter top and drop waist wrap skirt worn over leather pants. Cord and bits of fabric are couched on the top, a technique of adding cord on top of the fabric and fastening it down with stitches. Dany also wears this look in the 7th episode of Season 1. Of this look, Clapton has this to say, "Dany steps into Dothraki society and grows within it. Her costume throughout the season reflects that. She starts off with a basic Dothraki outfit, but as she evolves, she ends up having a bit more ornamentation." Dany wears it with leather boots and wrap ties. Beginning in Season 1, Dany almost consistently wears this style of boots. According to Michele Clapton, the Dothraki clothing and culture are based upon the traditionally nomadic Bedouin people. Here are 2 images of Bedouin women from Tunisia in North Africa from the early 1900s. Again, their draped clothing is fastened with penannular brooches. In the debut episode of Season 2, The North Remembers, Dany heads into the red waist wearing her traditional Dothraki ensemble from Season 1 with the addition of leather shoulder armor. Number 16, soft gray wrap dress. Number 15, near white sheath dress with cape. Number 14, dove gray sheath gown with hanging sleeves. And number 13, gray sheath gown with hanging sleeves tattered. In the mid-season episode 5, Kill the Boy, Dany wears this Grecian-inspired, softly draped cross-halter-style gown in her private chambers. The backless gown is made from what I believe is a soft gray, silk-knit jersey fabric over top of a silk slip and with a slightly structured cape over her shoulders that is split at the back so it doubles as a shawl. You can see the darts on the cape at her shoulders. The fabric seems to have some stretch to it, and you can see that the soft pleats have been tacked in place. There's a little bit of stress on the gathers. The double-layer cross pieces taper at the neck and are bound in corset lacing tape with 2 nickel grommets for laces. Finally, the fabric appears to be turned under and top-stitched with what looks like a stretch stitch. The near-white sheath-style floor-skimming gown with a matching cape from Season 5, Episodes 7 and 8 is one of Dany's most memorable looks. The simple gown features a sweetheart neckline with a fabric cross-strap with no detectable seams. The most spectacular aspect, of course, is Dany's silver 3-headed dragon neck piece offset against the white gown. This cape, like Dany's previous cape from Episode 5, appears cut in the same fashion with the shoulder darts following the neckline shape of the gown. I think that the architecturally designed capes by British-born fashion designer Charles James might have inspired Michele Clapton. Known as America's first couturier, Charles James is widely considered to have been a master of cutting and was known for his highly structured aesthetic. Charles James has largely influenced the world of fashion over the last 9 decades. Here is a contemporary look from Zac Posen's Fall 2004 collection inspired by Charles James. In Season 5, on the first day of the Great Games of the Daznax Pit and Marine, Dany wears this dove gray sheath gown made from sand-washed silk. Clapton said that she wanted to suggest that Dany wants to be attractive, yet also be in control. The structured gown features a round split neckline with a center front seam, pulling the gown nicely into the body. Clapton adds a partial cape, really more like long, fully lined hanging sleeves shaped into the collar with angled pleats. In Episode 9, The Dance of Dragons, we see a back view of Dany's gown and the long hanging cape-like sleeves from behind it. It also appears that the dress has a back slit to aid with movement. Clapton said of Daenerys wearing riding pants hidden under her gowns in Season 5, "I still always put trousers underneath because in her psyche, anything might go wrong, and she's always thinking, I might need to run away. Even with the longest, most beautiful gowns, she always wears a pair of boots and trousers. I like that sense of, I can play this queen, but underneath, I can run." London-based Eunice and Eliza collaborated with Clapton to create the silver dragon neck sculpture, which was hand-carved from wax before being cast in sterling silver. In the final episode of Season 5, Mother's Mercy, Dany drops her pearl ring in the grass as she is surrounded by the Dothraki blood riders, hoping to leave a trail. The season picks up where it left off in Season 5. Dany is surrounded by Dothraki blood riders who capture her and present her to Khal Moro, who has taken her prisoner. Dany's costume, as seen here in the debut episode, The Red Woman, is a dirty and highly distressed version of her dove gray gown from Season 5. There's not much here happening design-wise. Dany continues to wear her gown, although in tatters, trousers, and suede boots. Michele Clapton said in a 2012 interview, "If it takes 3 days to make a costume, it then takes another 3 days to destroy it and break it." Number 12, openwork pleated gown. In this memorable look from Episode 7, Mockingbird, Dany wears this revealing gown with openwork panels in her private chambers designed for warmer climates. The gown is largely soft gray, the dragon scale bra top and the pleated skirt, while the contrasting blue cross straps and shoulder pieces, still hinting at her remembrance of Khal Drogo, are covered in embroidery. Clapton said in her book that it was one of the most difficult dresses because there is so little of it. The gown is nearly identical in the front and back. Of the addition of this soft gray color to Dany's wardrobe palette, Clapton said, "Now she's got this sense of power and also a sense of immortality. I wanted to give this rather untouchable quality to her. The idea behind the white and pale gray is the sense of removal, a removal from reality." Michele Clapton said of her embroidery, "The shoulder has 3 layers and is quite armor-like, so I heightened this by stitching rows of stacked Tilla beads at the edge." Number 11, Dragonstone Throne Room Dress. Clapton said of Dany's transition in Dragonstone, "You know, Dany has now moved from the heat of Meereen and she's coming north, so we obviously see her covered much more than we're used to. And then her army is the Unsullied, so we're trying to blend it all in and make them become a force." The rigid collar is cobra-shaped, a throwback to her earlier Meereen costumes in Essos, not dragon per se, but reptilian nonetheless. Clapton said of her new look for Season 7, "She's this figurehead of her army. I wanted her to stand in front of the Unsullied and be their leader." The costume is made from silver gray scaly reptile-like fabric that has red embroidery on the collar, the reverse of her blood red dress from Season 8. The texture of the red cape is flat chevron pleats, and the skirt is sunburst pleated, both by British pleaters cement pleating. Sunray pleats, or sunburst pleats, as they are known in the U.S., are bias-cut knife pleats that are narrower at the top than at the bottom so that the narrow portion can fit into the waistband of the skirt. In an interview with Insider, Clapton said, "You see the red creeping in, and the scale and the shape of her brother's costumes. If I did that in Season 3, where would I go, you know?" While I didn't agree with this, I always thought that Dany should have had a crown. Clapton said in an Uproxx interview, "She can't have a crown. She hasn't conquered yet. But I love this idea of this chain of intent. I think it's quite interesting that we finally see her embracing her brother's ambition." Number 10, Charcoal Grecian Gown. We're now in the top 10. In Episode 9, Battle of the Bastards, having defeated the Sons of the Harpy and restored Meereen under her rule, Dany returns to her more regal dress. She wears this charcoal gray Grecian-style gown and silver jewelry neckpiece when she greets Yara and Theon in the throne room. Personally, this is probably my favorite gown worn by Dany, but there are other costumes, in my opinion, that thematically and design-wise deserve to be higher on this list. In Episode 10, Dany names Tyrion Hand of the Queen in the same slightly sheer silk jersey gown that's finished off with a silver belt. The asymmetrical gown has a deep V neckline. The left side has an elbow-length sleeve, while the right side has a long hanging sleeve. Dany uses the backdrape as a wrap around her right arm and over her left shoulder. Here is a reproduction of the neck piece, Michele Clapton collaborating once again with jewelry makers Eunice and Eliza. Number 9, Cream Gown and Cape. Dany's cream gown features an off-the-shoulder split V neckline with a black collar bar of sorts. She repurposes the same pleated underskirt from Season 4. Clapton said of this style of dress, "It's almost like it's revealing, but at the last minute, it's not. It's held together. She wants to be attractive and appealing, but at the same time, she wants to be in control." The gown features an empire high waistline and long hanging sleeves covered in dragon scale type texture. The bottom portion of the gown looks like it's constructed from shantung or Dupioni silk fabric with center front seams on either side that end in 2 skirt slits. While I think that Michele Clapton created the textures for the bodice and shoulders, cement pleating created the dragon scale texture for the sleeves, a technique known as the flat chevron pleat. The textures transition beautifully together. Number 8, Laser cut gown with a pleated underskirt. Clapton finally abandons the dragon scale and creates this fantastic, architecturally designed gown created from laser cut leather. The gown employs Clapton's signature arch and circle opening, and she repurposes the soft gray pleated skirt. The gown appears to be seamed only at the sides. I cannot detect a princess seam or a dart, a cutting technique that shapes the garment to the body. This is very clever, as this would distort the cutwork swirl pattern. The arch cutout gown looks like the shape of the Indian kurti and skirt. The gown is lined with a soft gray fabric to give the appearance that it's see-through. Here's a close-up of both the top and bottom of the dress. You can see that the dye blue leather is mottled and not consistent. This creates texture and depth. Dani's dress wouldn't be complete without a little bling, Miyuki tilla beads, silver lock stitch embroidery, and a variety of small and medium round beads that I can detect. This might be unintentional by Clapton, but the swirling pattern symbol appears throughout the show. If you want to wear a tinfoil hat for a bit, you can check out my symbols in Game of Thrones. My theories didn't amount to much, but it was fun to make just the same. Number 7, turquoise Carthian gown. In episode 5, The Ghost of Harrenhal, Dani appears in this classical Grecian-style gown. Of this look, Clapton said in season 2, she arrives in Qarth completely broken, and she is initially won over by the Carthian style, this beautiful revealing turquoise dress, but then she realizes it's not quite right. It's not her. The gown is created from pleated turquoise paper silk printed with gold. The dress is in keeping with the women's dress styles in Qarth. The gold filigree belt and hanging beads, however, come from the men's attire. According to Clapton's book, the metal accents were inspired by the design of the gates to Qarth. Clapton said she needs to have strength to her, but also vulnerability. Will take her even further as she finds herself. Number 6, wedding dress. Clapton said of Dani's floaty silk wedding dress, it was meant to unwrap as if Drogo is opening a present. In the show, the gown was thought to have been supplied by Illyrio, Dani's guardian in Pentos. Clapton said Daenerys' wedding dress in the first episode is supposed to be pale, like the color of the moon, because of how Drogo later calls her the moon of my life, and he is her sun and stars. The fabric was originally purchased at Top Fabric of Soho, described as a high-quality, fine silk and metal chiffon in off-white. The silver metallic threads give it a slight ripple effect. And of course, Clapton said, at the end of the first season, Dani burns in it, which is rather poignant, the end of her story with Drogo. Number 5, silk gown with a pleated underskirt. In the season 4 episode, The Mountain and the Viper, Dani dresses in this stunning blue and silver gown with a soft gray pleated underskirt, similar to the openwork gown. Clapton said of Dani setting up shop in Marine, once she's there and has her own penthouse, you actually start seeing her dressing for certain occasions. So she's very formal when she's in the main hall. We're still keeping it to the blues and silvers, but there's more dragony skin-inspired embroidery. The gown is embroidered with the North American smock stitch arrowhead pattern to create the dragon scale detailing, and the lock stitch to anchor down the dragon scale and Italian tubular mesh wire. The gown features a mermaid-like mesh overlay on top of the blue fabric, creating the appearance of dragon scales. On the shoulders, Carragher has added a muted blue-gray dragon scale instead of the brighter blue seen on the front and back. Again, more Miyuki tilla beads and drops. Dani's jewelry includes a double dragon talon necklace made from copper. Number 4, sailing costume. Number 3, arrival at Dragonstone. I am grouping both Dani's sailing costume that closes season 6 and arrival at Dragonstone costume that opens season 7, with the Dragonstone costume having some additions. You have to admire Clapton's thrift with certain costumes saving the big coin on things like embroidery and decoration. Clapton describes Dani's season 6 finale costume and that of her companions as charcoal pewter color, explaining that the situation is becoming very serious, and in some ways the darker colors sort of tell that story better. Everything is slowly closing down and losing color, and I think it just makes it more oppressive. The wavy rib silk gown is mid-calf. Like many of Dani's gowns, the back offers a surprise opening that is partially covered by the hanging sleeves, cape ties, and features a unique down-pointed chevron. The head of the dragon featured on the upper sleeves wraps around the back to form the wings and body. The three-dimensional dragon motif is created with this spiky copper sequin on silk chiffon fabric from Top Fabrica Soho and further embellished with dragon scale smocking and some of the silver lock stitch detail. Now I should mention that most of the fabrics purchased at Top Fabric are no longer available. For the arrival in Dragonstone, Clapton's team modified Dany's Season 6 costume by adding this Japanese-style collar and sleeves, which is clever because it appears to be an entirely new costume. The silhouette, Clapton explained, purposely echoes that of the Targaryen style that her brother wore in Season 1. This look is an amalgamation of all her outfits. The collar is Targaryen with the Japanese right over left collar with the cobra shaping. All of her collars are rigid and armor-like. The dress itself is a more modest Carthene look, no cutouts or bare skin. It's got the empire waist with the two skirt slits inspired by the Indian kurti and the long hanging sleeves. She has fitted sleeves now, of course, because it's colder. Dany wears trousers and suede boots. They're always slightly darker than the dress itself. Carragher covered the bodice with a red feather stitch, dragon scale smocking, and these metal fasteners that kind of look like dragon claws. On the collar are a series of red ruby Swarovski crystal beads and pewter beads that create the dragon scale texture and sparkle in the light. The embroidery wraps around the cape sleeves and the feather stitch continues down the seam of the fitted sleeves and spills out onto the cuffs, and the dragon scale smocking is applied to the sleeves in a matching fabric. To complement the look, Dany wears one piece of jewelry, a silver dragon hair adornment hairpin. Number 2, white fur coat. In the Season 7 episode Beyond the Wall, Dany goes on a rescue mission dressed in a snow-white coat befitting a queen. I personally believe that Clapton won an Emmy for this episode because of this costume. Clapton told the Huffington Post, "I was keen to create a warrior look, a thing of beauty." The costume designer explains how she came to design this look in a Harper's Bazaar interview. Dany's white coat was quite a big decision. If you're riding a dragon north of the wall, look at what the wildlings wear. Look at what everyone who knows the area wears. In a way, this is Dany's wildling coat. It's a functional piece. Of the silhouette, Clapton said, "It is so easy to lose the person in the layers, especially someone as small as Emelia. That's why the coat is mounted on a very slender structure base. It would be impossible to use a long fur on her. The contouring of the costume also helps to define the shape, and the wide shoulders emphasize the small waist." She told the Inquirer, "The coat is made of fake leather strips, 2 kinds of fake fur, a long pile high-quality fake fur, and a short pile white fake fur, and some white rabbit fur at the hem. It's basted onto a corset to create the structured shape. The whole process took 2 to 3 months to sample and decide the direction, best materials, and construction." This silver 3-headed dragon, of course, is offset beautifully against the white background. And number 1, blue dress and cape. I concluded that Dany's blue dress and cape ensemble had to be number 1 because, thematically, in my humble opinion, it is the most important costume that she wears in the series. It also might surprise you to learn that there are 3 versions of the costume. Once again, I have grouped them all together, but my favorite is the simplest of the 3 without so much ornamentation. The dress is a wrap style crossing right over left in the same way as the kimono gowns from King's Landing, the arch emphasizing the curve of the hip. Clapton said for the first time she's her own person, so she begins to develop her own style with some reference to what we've seen before. She has control of herself and control of her look. It's very different, quite a strong look. The dress is based on the Karth shape, Clapton said. It's the only other shape of dress she has seen, so she has interpreted into her individual look. The inspiration for Dany's costumes and their evolution is very much her story. Meanwhile, the color choice was dictated by the fact that the Dothraki precious color is blue, so that's really been the basis of her palette, Clapton explained. Production came up with the concept that the blue color, as seen as war paint on Khal Drogo's shoulders, was a rare natural pigment available to the Dothraki in their region. Clapton said, so yes, blue is a very important color for her, and I think she'll carry that through for a while. The costume team made multiple copies of Dany's bright blue garment because the intense Moroccan sun faded the color after just a few days of shooting. Clapton said, we looked at so many elements and we played with dragon scaling embroidery, and the sleeves seemed almost like the hood of a snake. I wanted to draw in the dragons, but also create a sense of armor, something protective about the choices she makes. Dany adopts this decoration style from her brother's clothing because Viserys would have been old enough to remember the dragon scale ornamentation of the old Targaryen court. Carragher said, I started to be involved in embellishing her costume in season 3. The decoration on her costume develops from a subtle texture as she increases in power and strength. This texture becomes more defined to map out her journey in the story. On the bottom portion of the costume, Clapton said that Dany has been leading a nomadic life. With the riding, she has to wear boots and she has to wear leather trousers. The trousers are practical. The Dothraki are nomadic, so they ride every day. Dany also dons this fantastic cloak fastened at the neck with a clasp. The fully lined hooded cloak has a wonderful luster. If you want to learn more about all of the Game of Thrones costumes, you can check out Clapton's book, Game of Thrones, The Costumes, the official book for Season 1 to Season 8. I'll leave a link in the description. And stay tuned because we will be providing analysis for the costumes in the upcoming HBO series House of the Dragon, including the newly released trailer and entertainment promotional pictures and still images. Thank you for spending time with me. I'll see you in the next video.